Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody for joining us. My name is Olga Atamanova, and Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform continues its operation today. It's been 300 days of the full-scale invasion of the Russian occupiers in our land, and I want to thank everybody who tells the world the truth about this war. And joining us online right now is Pavlo Hrod, the president of Ukrainian World Congress. Good afternoon, Mr. Pavlo. Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Pavlo. May we start with the fact that we know that the World Ukrainian Congress helps a lot to Ukrainians, not only to Ukrainians, but to our armed forces as well. Can you please give us more comments about that assistance, that help, and how did the work of Ukrainian World Congress change since the beginning of the full-scale invasion? You probably know that more than half a century the Congress coordinates and unites the world Ukrainian diaspora. Now it includes more than 60 countries with 2 million Ukrainians, where Ukrainians have their national organizations. With the beginning of the full-scale invasion, our communities throughout the world and the friends of Ukraine who joined us in protests and calls to the governments of the countries to support Ukraine. And our focus from the beginning of the full-scale invasion was in military, economic, and political support of Ukraine in all phases. For the civil society in all the country to support Ukraine, and we work both in the street meetings, in the lobbies of the governments, and in the media of the countries we live in, and we tell the world what's going on in Ukraine, whether it's Portugal or Spain or German or English. We talk in all languages. We tell in all languages that the governments and the citizens should support Ukraine. The advocacy part, the political part, is one sphere of our activities. Another type of activities is the collection of humanitarian aid and sending it to Ukraine. We can divide it in two parts. First is the direct support to Ukraine, and second is the work and support of the refugees who we know evacuated from Ukraine in large numbers, and our communities help Ukraine in all the countries, in all the levels, social, moral level, and material level, and in political as well. In the World Ukrainian Congress pays most attention to the defenders of Ukraine. So we started the campaign Unite with Ukraine from the beginning of the war, and within the last 10 months we collected more than $40 million and handed it for procurement of the equipment for the defenders of Ukraine. And we heard it from the very first days directly from territorial defense forces that they needed personal body armor, the helmets, and we responded and procured tens of thousands of PPE in an organized way through territorial defense forces, through their structure, and then we got the understanding of the need of the generators, communication systems, and many other things, like, for example, drones for our defenders. And we were just back from our visit to Ukraine, where first of all we handed a large package of equipment, but also we wanted to communicate with the leaders of the military sector, but also with the private militaries, either volunteers or the representatives of the armed forces of Ukraine, what are their needs, so we could continue collecting the equipment for the defenders of Ukraine. Thank you very much for this support on behalf of all the Ukrainians for what you're doing. This is something of the utmost importance to all of us. Mr. Pavlo, as you mentioned, we understand that the World Congress works in a number of countries, in many countries of the world, which countries were most difficult to work with, so they understand what's going on here? Did you have any cases like this, or everybody treated the issue with understanding, or did everybody understand what's going on here, and that Ukraine defends not only our country but the West in general? Well, it depends on the phase of the war we're talking about. First of all, it was important to convince everybody that it's important to protect Ukraine today and to provide the most military assistance possible, because we know that in the beginning of the war, many Western partners were not convinced that Ukraine may hold on, Ukraine may stand. But when they've seen the brave, capable defenders of Ukraine, volunteers, Ukrainian armed forces, when everybody's seen how courageously the Ukrainian armed forces repelled the first wave of Russian attack, and it gave the reinforcement to the convincement on part of both Ukrainian government and armed forces and Ukrainian diaspora, who called all the Western partners, all the Western countries to get engaged in the process, so as they did, and now they provide the necessary armaments so Ukraine could protect itself. But the first phase was most difficult because for many countries, and one of the best examples was Germany, they were hesitating whether to provide the arms to Ukraine. And now it's necessary to give Ukraine more arms, but they've taken a very important political resolution to start providing Ukraine with military aid, and that's very important, I would say, breaking point that happened. And today we're seeing that maybe the most complicated is not work with our Western partners like North America and Europe, but today it's Latin America, Africa, Asian countries. There we have communities. We have communities in South America, and we work with them so that our communities influence their governments to improve, to reinforce the support to Ukraine. But there are issues with Africa and Asia, and we cooperate with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with Minister Kuleba and diplomatic representative offices, so we could reinforce this political work in the most efficient manner to convince that part of the world to support Ukraine, and at least so that they vote for Ukraine in the United Nations organizations, because there will be more votings, and so that they vote to draw Russia away from the Security Council. So this is where we focus our efforts. Dear colleagues, if you have any questions, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Pavlo. I'm the editor of the diaspora section in Ukrinform, and I'm curious about the following thing. Last week you had a meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Dmytro Kuleba, and it was said that Ukraine does not only has to stand against the Russian world, but to create its own Ukrainian world. So can you please tell us what does it mean, and how does the Ukrainian World Congress assist to it? Thank you for your question. I will start with the fact that the Russian world very actively and works in all the countries where Ukrainians reside, and they get a lot of funding for those activities. And the most threat comes from Europe, because now there are most of the refugees in Europe from Ukraine who look for shelter, who look for satisfaction of some spiritual needs, or training in the Ukrainian language, or education for their kids in the schools. And we see that the Russian world keeps working in encouraging Ukrainians to come to the Slavic centers, and we know that those are in fact established to pull them back to Russian world. And we see that from the point of view of the Russian Orthodox Church, that they actively draw Ukrainian Orthodox Christians. They try to engage them in their charges, and it's no secret that Russian Orthodox Church is just a department of the FSB. And today we work with I will start with our work with the church of and we were meeting Svetoslav we discussed how our church can support the communities of Ukrainians abroad. So it's opening of the new churches, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. It's a complicated question because it's a political question as well in terms of a jurisdiction of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine. And we're trying to find some innovative ways for Ukrainian Orthodox Church to take care of its adherents abroad. And this is what we can say about the churches. It's either we should create new churches abroad, whether it's a Ukrainian Orthodox Church or a Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And second is the creation of the Ukrainian world. Well, Ukrainian world is creation of institutions in every country which would be taking care about Ukrainians from the cradle to the tomb. I'm talking about the Ukrainian schools, the churches where the Ukrainian kids get baptized, where the Ukrainians can get married, but those are the cultural organizations as well. It's the whole Ukrainian world where the conscious Ukrainians can be educated. Like me, for example, I was born abroad, but I'm a patriotic, conscious Ukrainian, and this is the creation of this Ukrainian world with a positive image that we can go to the world so everybody knows who Ukrainians are, and because the whole world knows Ukrainians as the kind people integrated in the society but not assimilated in it. I really appreciate this question and I appreciate this conversation. I'm reminding you, dear colleagues, joining us was Pavlo Hrod, the president of the Ukrainian World Congress. Thank you very much for the interest to this subject. And right now our team is working on putting together the schedule for tomorrow. So bear with us and trust in our armed forces and work for the victory. Glory to Ukraine.